You're in for a treat. This is Kathy for Getting Chatty with Kathy. And today we're going to hear from Joel Plaskett. This is an interview we did a few weeks ago that we're excited to share with you. I hope you like it. Take care out there. Joel.
Kathy.
How's it going?
Well, how you doing?
I just got to savor this moment. And how are you so young looking? You are the freshest.
Well, I shaved today. That might be part of it, and in certain light, my hair looks a little less gray, but it's pretty gray now. So I don't know if I'm as young looking in the clear light of day, but
you're looking good. Touring is good for you. We are in the Artesian here in Regina, Saskatchewan, and I'm with community radio, CJTR, and I just can't thank you enough.
Oh, my
to
pleasure.
Take this interview.
Right
you've made my day, my week, my month.
I always love getting an invite to talk, and I like radio, and I particularly like community radio. So yeah.
I think that especially through the last few years, we lost a lot of money for funding for positions and that sort of stuff. So we're kind of rebuilding. So every chance that we have a great opportunity to meet somebody and chat with them, I'm just so excited to
it's my pleasure.
Do it. Anyways, so new album.
Yes.
It's been a while.
Yeah. It's been a while. I put a record. There was one record that came out right at the top of the pandemic, 2020.
Perfect timing.
Big quadruple album as the world shut down, which was, kind of a drag at the time because I'd been working on this record for years called 44. But then in some ways I got these nice notes from people who suddenly had time to listen to a quadruple album because nobody could go anywhere. So it worked out strangely okay in terms of people actually tuning into that album. But
we did all slow down a little. You're right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I slowed down a lot. I couldn't tour. I mean, it was a bit of it was challenging, but I think for the people who things sped up for, where everything got so intense. So it's one of those weird asymmetries where it was everything stopped and everything sped up too,
Weird. It's kind of you had some inspiration too to finally what an experience we've all been through. And now we're on the other side of it and we're seeing artists come to the cities again and we're getting back to some of the good stuff. Thank God.
Yeah.
I missed my concerts.
Yeah. It was nice to be playing again. And the new record is kind of a quiet record.
I noticed that.
A bit contemplative, and some of it I think comes out of that time of, it's not a pandemic record per se, but a lot of the tunes were written in 2020, 2021, 2022.
Spoken word too, which I thought was neat.
Yeah,
I like
there's
that.
some different stuff on it. I'm liking it. It's been well received. And it was just kind of a reflection of where I was at. And I think where I'm still at a little bit. I mean, it's nice to be on the road. This is the busiest tour, the most dates I've done in years.
Which are all sold out. It's incredible. I'm so proud of you.
Really
this
good.
is
Thanks.
really good.
Yeah, it's really good. And so yeah, I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying the work. I like the stage. It's a fun show. It's kind of an intimate show. I'm telling stories and sharing some images and stuff. We've got a kind of way to project some photographs and stuff. So there's a kind of nice kind of storytelling element to it.
You've always had a story time kind of element to it, which has made part of why your concerts are the best concerts to go to, because it's an experience, really.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stories behind the tunes and I don't know, there's a kind of wing it component every night, to be honest. And I like sort of being in the moment. I prepare enough, and this show has a bit of an arc to it, I think, or a purpose to it. But there's a sort of enough room in it that I could improvise a little bit too, which is sort of my favorite.
Kind of talk with the crowd. And
and because I'm always, it's just me on stage, then there's a kind of, I can navigate it a little bit differently every night, which is the fun of it. And I love band shows and shows where I get to perform with other people, but there's something about playing solo that lends itself to both storytelling as well as just being able to kind of wing it in a way where if I feel like singing a song, I don't have to say, do you remember how this goes? It's I just need to remember how it goes.
It's on you.
It's all me. And if my voice is hoarse, I can lower the key by a step or something, you can just sort of change on the fly. So, yeah.
It makes it magical, actually, because it makes it so personable right there.
Yeah. I like, and these are small venues that we're doing on this tour, which is part of.
You know what? Speaking of the small venue, I was interviewing another person today, Stephanie from Transition House Regina.
Okay.
And she was a little upset with you because the venue was too small.
Right. Yeah. I did have some notes from Regina in particular, which was like, you need to play a bigger venue. And which is really nice to hear. And that there's a demand. But yeah, there was a kind of deliberate, partly was it's not an easy climate to sell tickets in. So there was just trying
risk averse.
Trying to, and also trying to make it so that the shows were small enough that the storytelling and solo show element wouldn't get unwieldy, because the larger the venue, the more you have to reach the back of the room. And so there's that. Just kind of like winging it. And being able to. And then it also, like, the thing about is we added multiple shows in Calgary. We played 4 nights at the Ironwood, and which is not a big venue. So it probably ended up being about as many people as I'd played to on one night there, but it looks good on paper. And so nobody's like, yeah, it was a phone booth. We sold it out. Nobody knew it. Nobody in Halifax knows that the Ironwood only holds 3 people.
Well, we're really happy that you keep on coming here and singing to us, because every time it's just such an experience. I had asked you before we started if I could ask you about where you draw your passion from. And I really think that as an artist, you've been around forever. Where did it start, that passion to sing songs and poetry? And where did that come from?
I grew up around music in my household. My dad played socially with people. My mom danced when I was younger, and they had a good record collection. So we had music in the house. I didn't really want to play it as a kid, but I was always, I liked songs, and I remember sort of singing along to certain songs my dad would sing, or going to school in elementary and like quoting, like referring to a song or something like that. And I listened to like Casey Kasem's American Top 40. I lived in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. So it was just like, there was one little sort of record store there. I remember like buying early 45s. In, like,
it's just like living in Regina, Saskatchewan, really. Yeah,
similar sized cities, And then when we moved to Halifax, I didn't know anybody. So I met these 2 12-year-olds, Ian and Rob, and Adam and Alex. There's 4 of them. They were all friends. And I was lucky enough to kind of start hanging out with these guys. And we were all getting into music. I was getting into punk. I sort of discovered punk rock around that time. We all did, and classic rock,
Yeah.
And this is like 87,
okay.
So I'm 12 at that point. And essentially Rob, I think, was the first one to sort of pick up a guitar, start taking lessons. And I said, Dad, give me guitar lessons so I can jam with Rob, And so it was like a social kind of imperative, I think, initially was
hanging out with the guys.
Something to do with people that I didn't know that well, but I was just getting to know. It was like an identity thing, like, like, let's play some music. And so it started there, and then very quickly kind of developed. Rob had an interest in writing his own tunes, and we went on to be in Thrusher together, Ian, Rob, and I. And so Rob immediately started writing songs, and I did too. It was kind of like, self-expression just sort of instantly sort of fell. It wasn't like we just wanted to learn. We learned a bunch of covers and we played covers, but we were throwing in originals at the grade 9 school dance. Like we played Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd and Jumpin' Jack Flash, as well as like a Metallica ripoff instrumental we wrote called Hinge, or, a song Rob wrote about like an article he'd read in Chicago Rolling Stone, or in Rolling Stone about, like, he called it Chicago Death Police, about these like violent police. And, he's writing about deep stuff that he'd read in Rolling Stone magazine. They're like, he was like writing, grade 8 political commentary on these articles.
He found his roots early.
It was awesome. And so he was really prolific. And as a result, in a kind of, I think, like competitive solidarity.
That's awesome, though.
I started to try to do the same thing. I was like, Rob could write songs. I'm going to try too. And Ian did the same. We were all writing. Rob and I kind of did the majority of the writing in that band. And so it's kind of sparked. And we would have conversations about what mattered in music and what we loved. And
you've always touched on like actual things going on.
Yeah.
I love that. Like you bring up things and you have like a conversation about like current events in some of your songs.
Yeah. I think I'm trying to pay attention. More and more, there's always this dance. I think where I'm at right now is, I'm often referencing places and people. Those are the starting points, are kind of the experience of moving through the world, being affected by place or people, and how they're actually very much innately, like very much joined at the hip. You go like, if I'm singing about someone, it's usually someone somewhere.
Yeah,
you know,
the place is a character too.
And so, and as a result, I've toured a lot in Canada. So Canada shows up, which gives it a kind of familiarity across the country, which makes it fun to go on the road because I have connections with people and places nationally and to some degree internationally. And so that sort of I guess not helps, but it's there and it's like a real thing for me. And so I kind of start there, but I'm also interested in like the kind of less explicit being maybe the wrong word, but not explicit in terms of it being like, or spelling everything out,
right?
Where you
don't want to do that,
where you label the you mention the details, and I do that, but then there's this implicit tact, which to me, I think I'm more and more interested in. I think my latest record resides there a little bit more. While there's specifics, like I mentioned, Maidstone or something, in a spoken word bit, towns like that, there's still places. There's this sort of implicit space that I'm interested in exploring. With my music.
Is it so it's for you?
I guess so. I guess it's more like I get surprised, and often I feel like more and more tunes. I think there was a time where previously, and maybe I think this is just the way I see the world sort of differently. I see it less materially now. It's still one half of it materially, but I feel like there's this other space that is out there and in here, bigger and spiritual or cosmological, for lack of a better word. It's like and so that space, I used to sort of go, oh, I wrote this song, and now I feel like, oh, that song came to me, and I really don't always know what I'm writing about. I have a sense of it, or I'm having fun with language, but it's often later that things start to reveal themselves. And so I guess that's what I'm getting at, is like that. And then you realize, of course, like all music does that. For, when I listen to Joni Mitchell, I don't really know what she's going on about. I have a sense,
right?
But then it means something different to me. And that's the beauty of it. It's always got that exchange, always got that space, but really there's something, I guess I'm kind of recognizing or trying to acknowledge about that internal space that it's going to occupy for myself and will be different for somebody else. And trying to write lyrics that sort of can almost serve that a little bit more, rather than telling people exactly how you feel or exactly how you think they should feel, which is what a lot of pop music does. It says, this is a breakup song. This is however, and it's spelled out, and there's nothing wrong with that. 20 more times. And that's powerful in pop music. That's powerful in pop music, and it's not a bad thing. And there's a time and place, and I still do that sometimes, but I'm not, I think where I'm at.
I think it's still deeper, even if you're saying through and through and through three times. Honestly.
Yeah. There's something too about like how just language and how words and music work together to create this weird alchemy where they do something different than if you were just to say the same thing, And
I think you also go one step further. It's not just the song. You make it into the album like that. Like there's a flow to all of your albums from beginning to end. Yeah. And I think that you've played into that as a thought level one step farther, and I think that makes it so cool too.
Yeah, I like themes running across stuff, and most of my records sort of connect even with each other in some fashion. My wife Rebecca's had plays a big part of my life, and she's done the artwork for a number of the records. There's sort of lyrical themes that connect the records, or even people who sort of or play and things that appear across the albums, because I like to sort of recycle phrases. Not always deliberately, sometimes deliberately, but just by the fact that they just keep showing up. And there's, Springsteen has a degree of that. I've always admired his writing. Chuck Berry seemed to always create a world too when he was writing, but Springsteen had this way of sort of evoking New Jersey and somehow making it feel like it was all of America. You know what I mean?
Maybe you do that with Canada a bit.
Well, I mean, I certainly kind of feel like when it's true to say, I think that the general or the kind of broad, exists in the particular, right? They're kind of you say something particular and it resonates, becomes or universal. I should say the universal resides in the particular, and so I think that if you're writing specifically about a place or an experience, ultimately you're going to find people who hear themselves, even if they have no idea where Muscatobit Harbor is.
It's true. I'm a girl in a wrecking ball dress.
In a wrecking ball in a summer dress.
In a summer dress. That is me.
Yeah.
And every time I hear it, like I have a vision in my head, which is totally different than yours.
Cool.
But you make that vision for me. I love it.
Nice. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you for I'm just so happy that there's artists out there that represent Canada in such a good way. And like you make it beautiful and you take all the little pieces from home in Nova Scotia, but you don't just talk about that. You talk about everywhere in Canada.
Well, thanks. Yeah. I've spent I'm 49 now and I've spent 30 years on the road. I started touring right out of high school, I
feel tired 18, for you.
Yeah. I mean, I just woke up from a nap before this too. So I look a little tired. I sound tired, a bit hoarse,
No.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny crossing the country, and this is a detailed tour we're doing here with a lot of stops.
Do you know how many times across you've gone now?
I don't know. Like I've often tried to think if I could go back to booking agent statements and figure it out probably to some degree, but I think it's probably, it's probably averaged out to like once a year for 30 years or something, there's some years where it's not once a year, but there was early on, we were on the road all the time through the 90s. The Hermit toured and toured and toured. So yeah, busy. And so yeah, I feel like I get on these highways and I mean, as you see the cities change, but then there's a lot of things that sort of stay the same or, I love getting into this part of the world. Saskatchewan to me is really beautiful when you're rolling through like we drove from Medicine Hat up to Saskatoon yesterday for the show in Saskatoon, and that we went through like Palliser's Triangle, that sort of
the fields
fields. The rolling hills and the change of colors. It's extraordinary. I mean, I'm an ocean person. I'm an East Coaster, but there's something about the prairie that's like this whole other ocean of color
it's the wide open space.
and the sky is it's like it flips you upside down. It's like you're upside, you're in this, it's so wild. So,
and we have the cold winters like Halifax too. Actually, I spent a year in Korea and one of my closest friends ended up being an East Coaster. Okay. And I honestly think that like prairie people and East Coasters, we're kindred spirits.
I agree.
Yeah. And we got the cold winters where we shut in. And then we also have those times where we want to be out all the time because we're finally allowed out.
I think that's it. And the other thing I noticed too is Nova Scotia, Maritimes in general, but Nova Scotia has a lot of, it only has like Halifax and then maybe you've got like Truro or Sydney. It's only got a couple of sizable, like one or two cities where everyone feeds from the rural communities because they go there for university. So you get these kind of small town feel in big hospital. Cities. Yeah. So there's always this connection to all the smaller places in the urban centers. And then and of course there's people from elsewhere, lots of international students in Halifax and stuff too. But there is something about that where you always sense this connection to rural communities. And I sense that in Saskatchewan.
100%.
I think too, like both provinces. And I mean, I think the economics of everywhere is sideways now, but they were historically for a long time out east. It was kind of a have-not province. There was a lot of people leaving for work.
Especially with the fisheries. Ugh.
Fisheries, all of it. So I think there's always been a feeling, I don't know, like economically,
we ride the waves of the
kind of ride the waves of it. Yeah. And that feeling of like knowing what it means where people have to leave, to go make a go of it. I suspect Saskatchewan's no stranger to that feeling too. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And to stay is an actual conscious decision. And you got to like kind of fight through it sometimes.
Yeah. And you're building at a scale that is like I'm a small city person.
I love the small city.
That's my, so I don't really, so Saskatoon, Regina, the size of these cities work for me. Whereas, when I get into the really bigger ones, they're fun. I spend time in them and I've got half my old friends are in Toronto now. But it's a massive magnet and it's like, it's too
cement block.
Yeah, it's too strong for me. I got to keep a little bit of distance. So.
Yeah. Regina definitely has its, like the rolling like landscape, but also if you get a chance when you're driving tonight, if you are, the sky at night. And lately it's I don't know what's going on with the sun, but it's letting off more like rays off of it and it's causing aurora borealis is like crazy.
Really?
For real. So just make sure to stay up till like 12 or 1.
Great.
Easy peasy. Great. But you will get it. It's happening right now.
That's fantastic. That's, for me, we don't really get that much on the East Coast. I remember it might have been the first time I saw the Aurora Borealis was Northern Ontario. And we were driving. It was like all night drive or something. He's like, hang on, fellas, pull over. You know, it was like this was back in the hermit days, like getting out and just being
spectacular.
It is just.
This has been the summer for it. Like it's just been something else.
It's
Magnetic
beautiful.
field.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways,
Exactly.
I just would love to thank you again for coming today, and I won't take up any more of your time, but thank you
Thanks so
much
much
for coming,
Thank
and
you.
it's been wonderful to meet you.
Thank you. You too. Take care. Thanks.